This is Pop Culture Confidential, and I'm Christina Yerling Biru. I'm so honored to welcome Mary Bronstein, the writer and director of If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. The film follows Linda, a psychotherapist whose life is unraveling around her. She's navigating her daughter's mysterious illness, living in a motel because her ceiling is literally crashed in, and dealing with a husband who's away for work and only calling in occasionally. On top of that, she's in an increasingly volatile relationship with her own therapist, played by Conan O'Brien. The film is raw, funny, and a revelatory look at motherhood, complete with surreal visions, hamsters, and an absolutely incredible Oscar-nominated performance by Rose Byrne. I talked to Mary about where she was in her own life when she started writing the film, how she and Rose developed Linda's character, and the ongoing taboos about what you can and can't say about motherhood. We started by talking about how cathartic the film is and how much I myself could relate. Mary, thank you so much for joining me. The film is so cathartic. I can relate. I had some difficult years as a single mom where I kind of disappeared, identity and weight. And, it was horrible, but also crazy funny when I look back at it. So
Yes.
fucked up in a way that...
Yes.
So I've been waiting to talk to you since Telluride.
You saw it at Telluride. That's wonderful. That was a great screening.
Yeah, I wanted to start to ask, where in your life were you when you first started writing it?
Yes. So I was actually very much in the real place of the film when I started writing it. So what I like to describe this as is not a truly not an autobiographical film. I didn't do these things that the character does. And, there's a lot of surrealism and absurdism in the film, but that the film is entirely emotionally true, as you were alluding to before. And so when my daughter, who's 16 now and doing very well, I always like to preface with that, when she was 7, she became quite ill. And I needed to we're New Yorkers, and we needed to move to the whole other side of our huge country, to California, to get the specific treatment that she needed. And my husband stayed in New York for work. So we lived we really did live in a motel as roommates, my daughter and I, a little tiny room for 8 months. And, as you said before, the word disappearing, that is the feeling that I started to have in a really existential sort of crisis level where I felt like, I didn't have any touchstones of my regular life. I didn't have any of my identity, I didn't know who I was apart from the job of course, taking care of my daughter and getting her well and getting back to New York was the goal. So of course, that's the goal. And I disappeared into that, but there was a real terror feeling that came with that. And I quite literally started writing the film on at night when she would go to bed, on the floor of the bathroom, the only place I could turn the light on, with my computer, to try to capture that feeling, and kind of save myself through the process. But what I thought, I've never seen a film that deals with this feeling before. And I wanted to capture it as I was feeling it, and then hopefully put it on screen with as few filters as possible so that the audience could experience it as well. And so that's quite literally where I was when I started.
And you very much did that. I should preface that my kids are fine too.
Good.
Oh, yeah, you were talking about that being such an emotionally immersive film. I'm curious about from screenplay or from paper to film. I know that you knew that you were going to direct it, but is it all on paper, the cuts, the incredible, all the little immersive things that you do visually as well?
Yes, most of it is. So I'm a very visual writer. And so conceptual ideas like not showing the daughter's face, using the close-up, the various degrees of close-up that I use, the visuals of how things look, as well as how things sound, are on the page. And I really was trying to write a document that was the movie, so that the reader might be able to read the script and actually watch the movie, feel like they've watched the film was my
Yeah.
goal.
Rose said that the description of the hamster was Jack Nicholson scratching through the wall. I
Yes.
thought that was exactly the picture that I thought. I know what my reaction is very visceral to the film and other women around me, and it's radical storytelling that we need, but I'm wondering how men have reacted.
Yes, that's such an interesting question because while I was making the film, I wasn't thinking about men. And I wasn't also thinking about young people either. Like peop When I say young people, it makes me sound very old, but I mean anyone that, isn't at the stage of having a family yet. Uh, but I was surprised by the amount of engagement with both of those groups. Men, get very, very engaged emotionally with this film from the side of, wow, I never knew that. I never knew that either if they have a partner, that my partner would ever feel that way, or I never knew that my mother ever felt that way if they don't have a partner.
Interesting.
And so I get a lot of responses where men are responding very deeply and saying, right after the screening, I called my mother, or right after the screening, I called my wife. And then I've also had men um, who really, really relate to the husband character who's away for most of the film, but is on the phone. And nothing that and it's a certain frustration that I'm glad that I captured, because I know it was a frustration that my own husband had, and I'm glad I captured it, that other men see themselves in it. The husband character, Charles, played by Christian Slater, he nothing he's saying on the phone is wrong, if you actually look at what he's saying, but nothing is right. And it's sort of like nothing could be right that he could say because he's not there. And he's not doing the emotional work. And frankly, he's not the mother, even if he was there.
Hmm.
And so Conan O'Brien, actually, when he first read the script, said that he really related to this character because he would be away a lot for work, and his wife would be struggling with the children, and he had a sense of like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, wrapped myself in barbed wire so I can suffer also
Here, where I am, yeah.
where I am, but
Yeah.
that also wouldn't be the right thing. So they've engaged in it in that level. And then
How interesting.
young
Yeah.
people have been very, very excited about the film. I think also because it's something new, um, that they haven't seen before, and it's exciting for them. And they get really into the way that I'm telling the story, the visuals and the surrealism and all that stuff.
You put a smack in the middle of Linda's crisis, and Rose Byrne is, I mean, she's just incredible. But
Phenomenal.
I mean, but I understand that there was a very much a partnership between the two of you. She's even has your tattoos, and
Yes.
that you achieved this together. And how did you work to, how should I put this, discover who Linda was before we get smack in the middle of her crisis?
Yes. So the reason I do that as a storyteller is because I liked the idea of this is such a she is in such a crisis, and I wanted to start at a place of frenzy and then go upward, instead of starting at a place of calm and then discover the frenzy. I like, as a viewer, the experience of having to catch up to a film. Like, it's not being spoon fed to me, or pandering to me, that it trusts me to catch up with itself, which is why I drop the audience in that way. And Rose and I had a very, she kept telling me, oh, this is so luxurious. This is like rehearsing for a play. But on our own time, we carved out about 6 weeks before a hard preparation for the film, the actual, actual production preparation, that it was just the two of us at my kitchen table. And I would drop off my daughter, she would drop off her boys at school, and we would meet in my kitchen 3 times a week
Wow.
for 6 weeks, and go over the material, and sort of stop each time we had a personal story to relate to each other, and really got to a place of real trust and intimacy with each other. And then Rose was very interested in who, she brought the question of who was this woman before this story. Not only before the story, but who was she before she was a mother? Who was she before? Who was she when she was a teenager, even? And we built that up between the two of us. None of that is explicitly in the movie, but we have clues such as the tattoos, um, uh, which it was my idea to give her tattoos to show, oh, maybe this lady didn't always want to be a therapist. Maybe there was something going
She has
on
a
with,
history.
she has a history that we don't know about. But it was Rose's idea, can I have your tattoos? Which is so brilliant. And then it was also Rose's idea to do that sort of back of the head shave thing that she
Hmm.
has, that is also sort of, a woman trying to cling to a younger identity that she used to have. And so while all that work is not, in exposition, in the film, in dialogue, it's all there. And I think that doing that work is what brought Linda from an idea on a page to a fully formed human
I
being.
think so too. Yeah.
And it's really Rose's artistry, or the way she approaches roles as an artist, that helped with that.
And she looks so unbelievably tired. I could relate so
Yes.
much. I've never seen an actor be able to do that without. I'm thinking maybe she's been up 48 hours to film this, but
It was not
um,
method. Thank goodness she was sleeping, I hope. I didn't make her stay up.
I understand you also went with Conan. You did what you call a boot camp. What did
Yes.
his boot camp entail?
Yes, yes. Conan is the best. He's so with this process. He told me that doing this film, since he had never done dramatic acting before, was so terrifying, scared him to death. But that's why he said yes to it. And that's the type of person he is, and the type of artist he is, where he's always taking risks. And this was a risk for him. He spent our whole first meeting trying to talk me out of hiring him. He was, I'm not an
I can
actor.
hear that.
Yeah, I can't do it. I'm gonna mess it up. You can fire me. I'm like, we haven't even started. What I did was went out to LA for a week, and we worked for like 4 hours a day for a week, all in a very truncated period. As both a For me, I knew he could do it. I just had a sense he could do it. And for me to be able to show him that, and also for him to be able to show me what I was working with. And we worked really hard. And what we discovered is that, much to his argument, he is an actor. He was able to, he's used to being Conan O'Brien, the character of himself, the persona of himself. He's not used to inhabiting another character. And one of the big roadblocks was, Conan O'Brien, the person or the comedian, wants, as most comedians do, want people to like them.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and this is a guy who at times is maybe not likable, or
Right.
doing things that we might disagree with. And that's, the tension in a dramatic film. But he wasn't used to that. So he was very, very concerned about, well, if I was her therapist, I would, hire her a babysitter, and I would take her for a walk, and I'm like, but you're not her
You
therapist.
know.
This other guy is. This other guy is. We got to deal with him. And once he got over the hump of, okay, um, I understand the motivation of why this guy is doing these things. I understand he's a human being, and he's hit his limit with her. Which is why, maybe it didn't start out this way. Maybe it started out that he was this very supportive therapist, and now it's to this point where he can't deal with this
They're
lady.
both just
They're both,
killing each other.
and once he got to that part where he could understand that, is he was good to go. And I consider that's the storyline between the two of them, in a traditional film would be the love story. They have their breakup scene,
Right.
which is quite devastating. But how wonderful a job did he end up doing
Yeah,
from
I
all of
mean,
his protests?
amazing. Why do you think it's still so hard for us, I mean, in general or in society, to talk about how hard it is with motherhood and how it sucks sometimes? Why is it still so taboo?
I think it really, really, really is taboo, for the reason that if we um, complain about it out loud in public, or if we really get into the nitty-gritty of how difficult it can be, or how alone we feel sometimes, or how empty it feels sometimes, that it feels like a betrayal to our children. Um, which it's not. I want with this film to communicate the idea that a mother is a human being separate from their children, and all human beings have limits, and all human beings have flaws, and all human beings deserve empathy and grace, even mothers. We hold mothers up to such a high standard that, that there's this imaginary perfect mother. And that's not true. There is no perfect mother. And you know that I want to communicate that we can uh love our children to death as much as you can love anything in the entire world, which all mothers do, even imperfect mothers. um but it's okay to talk about the truth of your experience as a human being separate from that. It doesn't mean that you don't love your children, and it's not a betrayal to your children. And I think that's where the taboo lies. It's complicated.
Thanks to stories that coming from your way and others, we can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a quick little theory that I was thinking of at the beginning of the year. Several films came out, yours, Lynn Ramsey's, about, our generation as mothers, but also fathers, even your husband's film, Marty Supreme, deals with that,
Yes.
sentimental value. It feels like our generation, if I think we're
Yes.
about the same age, is very much thinking of ourselves as parents, while the previous auteur generation, you had like Mommy Dearest and Carrie's mom and East of Eden, and
You're
they were sort
right.
of therapy because what their parents had done to them. I don't know, do
Yeah.
you see any truth in that, or
That is
why
so
that shift is in our generation?
that is so true. And you know what? That's not something I've thought about. I love all those movies that you've mentioned, especially East of Eden is one of my favorite movies.
Me too.
I That's such an interesting question, and I think it has to do with how we have had the pressure that we've put on ourselves of how we parent,
Yes.
which at least in American culture is so different than how our parents parented, which was a very hands-off uh, type of parenting. Like I remember that I would be at the playground and my mother would be on the bench reading a book. Now, that would be
No,
unheard
no.
of for me to do. You're expected to be on the playground equipment with the child, or at least engaging with the child in some way, or engaging with other mothers, but certainly not doing something for yourself while your child is off playing.
And even worse, not even being at the playground, as
Or
my
just drop
parents
it
were.
off. Like I was dropped off
Yeah.
so many places, or I was off on my bike for hours, no
Yeah.
one ever was. And I think we overcorrected so hard in the other direction by being like, well, no, we felt maybe our parents weren't, and I don't want to talk for anyone's parents in particular, but just as a generation, that our parents were not maybe they weren't on the floor playing with us, let's say. They weren't present at all times. And then we overcorrected. We need to be present at all times. That's how you be a good mother. And that's exhausting. That is exhausting. That leaves very little room for you. And I think that's where we're left examining ourselves. I think that, the sort of 80s parenting, 90s parenting was very extreme in the other way, but ours is very extreme in this way.
So
And
they examine their parents and we're examining ourselves. Yeah.
I think so. And there's got to be a middle. There's got to be a
Yeah.
middle that the next generation can
Please.
find, please, because I think we're dealing with our own exhaustion in a lot of ways.
All right. Thank you. I'm
Thank
too
you,
much time.
Christina. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to Mary Bronstein. Don't miss If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. And thank you for listening. Follow Pop Culture Confidential wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.